Them old boys done rode a lot of miles, went to a lot of trouble just to get that gal.
Hey, little troublemaker.
You silver-tongued devil, you.
They playing your ass for a fool.
I spent my whole life surrounded by black faces. I only had one question. Why don't they just rise up and kill the whites?
Who knows what's gonna happen?
Welcome back. There's a lot of buzz about that new movie, Django Unchained. I wanted to share my take on the film. I knew there was more to Django than just being a movie when, for several days between Christmas and New Year's, I watched Drudge implicitly trashing Django Unchained on his hard-right website. Drudge is pretty famous for portraying black politicians, particularly President Obama, in ways that emphasize their race in negative contexts. But this was something else. Matt Drudge wasn't going after actor Jamie Foxx or filmmaker Tarantino. This was far more subtle, suggesting that the movie was failing and thus discouraging people from seeing it. So what could it be? I was wondering this for a few days. Other than being a movie with a black hero, what could cause Django Unchained to draw the ire of the hard right? I saw the movie on Christmas Day with my wife Louise and our kids in Portland, Oregon. The audience was all white. They cheered the black guy and his wife. But was that enough to piss off the hard right in America? I mean, plenty of movies have African-American heroes, and they do really well with white audiences, and they don't get trashed by right-wing news websites. It had to be something more than that. And then it hit me. The importance of this movie wasn't just about the horrors of slavery, although that is an important part of it, or the story of a knight off to rescue his damsel in distress, which is told brilliantly, or even brilliant acting and filmmaking. What it was really about was that this movie is a giant FU to the South, and not just the South of 1858. It was an FU to the South of today, and all the Republican politicians from other parts of the nation, increasingly including the Midwestern states, who have adopted those same divisive and race-baiting politics of the South. From Michigan Governor Rick Snyder handing over entire largely African-American communities and schools to crony emergency managers to loot on behalf of corporate and wealthy interests, to the Republican governors pushing voter ID suppression laws, to the raw racist rhetoric by national Republican legislators when they talked about breaking President Obama, Jim DeMint saying that, or the guy who shouted, "You lie," during the State of the Nation speech, who proudly bragged and repeated that their first and most important job, Mitch McConnell saying, the most important job is to make sure our first African-American president is a one-term president. They don't use the N-word as publicly or as frequently as their political ancestors did back in 1858 or in the movie. Instead, they use phrases today like states' rights, which, for example, was uttered by Ronald Reagan in his first speech as a candidate for president in 1980 in Philadelphia, Mississippi. Or when talking privately among themselves, they say things like this.
There are 47% who are with him, who are dependent upon government, who believe that they're victims, who believe that government has a responsibility to care for them, who believe that they're entitled to health care, to food, to housing, to you name it.
They follow the strategy Richard Nixon pioneered for the Republican Party, proudly dubbing it his Southern strategy. Think about it. There are two primary white characters in the movie. One, played brilliantly and brutally by Leonardo DiCaprio, has a thick Southern drawl and the worldview of those same people who today are working to suppress the black vote. The other speaks with an accent somewhere between John Kerry and Martin Bashir and is horribly offended by that Southern ethos. Guess which one is the movie's center of evil? As mentioned, there are plenty of black primary characters in mainstream movies that draw large white audiences. And Jamie Foxx is as brilliant an actor and strong a character as you'll ever see in any movie, regardless of race or genre or anything. But when you see Django Unchained, you'll understand why Foxx is not just playing another black action hero or action hero of any kind. This movie is something altogether different. It's about a culture in the South that existed for centuries before 1858, which is when the movie takes place, and is still very much alive today. Quentin Tarantino and Jamie Foxx have delivered a clear message to the tenthers, the birthers, the secessionists, and the vote suppressors of today's Republican Party and their few high-profile African-American enablers. Whether that was Tarantino's goal is something you'd have to ask him. But to this white movie viewer, that subtext of the movie was inescapable. And apparently, it was inescapable to Matt Drudge as well.